The Deep Night update is about a week old, and I honestly went into it rather naively, thinking it was gonna be like a different experience and higher difficulty and whatever. But I didn't really realize just how taxing it would be until I made these changes that I'm about to show you. So, if you've been struggling with it, or you don't know where to start, or you're just starting out and you're looking to make the right steps, there are a few things that you can change even before starting expeditions that will drastically improve your odds of winning and helping your team and surviving these terrible, terrible modifiers for enemies and bosses that honestly kind of broke me. So I got to depth 5 solo with Guardian in about 4 days, 5 days more or less. And it took me almost twice as much to get from depth 1 to depth 4 as it did to get to depth 5 from depth 4. So these changes are substantial. We're going to be talking about character choice, relic choices, deep relics, the demerit system, and the Dormant Power relic effect. And finally, we're going to be talking about routing and why it's a fake word. So without further ado, let's begin. So I'm not here to tell you which character is better than the other in terms of character choices. They can all work very well in depth 5 runs, what we'll call viable air quotes. But there are some that are going to be far comfier than others for this game mode, particularly because of the one-shot mechanics. So the first one is Wilder. He's going to save you every single time you rest at a grace from getting one-shot. Your claw shot has bleed now, and your onslaught stake can stun a boss, can give you a riposte, can revive someone with 2 bars. It's very good. Sync Boost with Iron Eye, basically bleed, poison, marks, and a good ult that interrupts and revives. Duchess is the queen of no hit. She has infinite iframes, and her restage is fantastic. She also has access to some of the best spells of the game with Carrion Slicer and Shattering Crystal, so she is another fantastic choice. The rest of the cast really have some downsides that you might just not like. So for example, Revenant can not really use her summons until she has her ult, because then they just get one shot, and that incurs a penalty on you. Raider can't just retaliate everything because he will lose so much HP. The totem, instead of just being a nuisance because it blocks the boss, can actually get you killed. Then Recluse is actually pretty high up there in terms of carry potential, but she does require a little bit more skill. Staying out of trouble is far more difficult with her than any other character. But her Soul Blood song is fantastic. It gets you basically a full heal, full FP regen. It gives you, as the Recluse, a Comet Azure or a Meteorite spell off, and it's fantastic. And finally, Executor, well, he does have the Sun Catcher, that's all he does. He has his status effects, that's all he does. The aspect of the Crucible you don't want to be in because you're just going to get one shot with it. So use it as an extra flask, essentially. That's basically what it is. But yeah, I mean, I'm here to tell you all of these are workable. They can all win games at depth 5. The question is, do you want to deal with their downsides? And if you're looking for meta picks and meta this and meta that, you probably don't. So yeah, those are the characters that I would recommend. Alright, so now we can talk about relics. Now here is where we have to address the elephant. The Night Invader and the Evergel relics are meta. And they've been meta ever since we started talking about them months back. But it's not until now that you start feeling the need for them, at least for depth 5. They are incredibly comfy, and they substantially boost your damage output to the point where it makes the game mode far more tolerable if you're not into the whole one-shot mechanics. So Evergel gives you a +5 multiplicative buff every single time you clear an Evergel. The Night Invader gives you a +7 every single time you clear a Night Invader. The problem is obviously trying to get them with the relics that you want, try to get them with the effects that you want, stuff like that. But that's just the price to pay. And yeah, the other one that gets an honorable mention is the partial HP restoration on post damage. This is called the Bloodborne Relic or the Rally Relic if you've heard about that. This one's also fantastic. So with Deep Relics, what you want to go for is primarily damage. You want to go for things like this, like attack power up when facing Frostbite. This is because most of your teammates Or if you're playing Duchess herself or Executor or Iron Eye, you're going to be proccing Poison and Frostbite fairly frequently. So this is just a flat damage boost. I think the +2 version is plus 20% damage increase. And so this is just fantastic for all those characters. And even if you're not rocking it, like I said, your teammates will be proccing those status effects, and this will buff you against that specific enemy. Other honorable mentions are things like max stamina increase per Great Encampment or max HP increase per Great Church. These are plus 5% increases to those stats, and they're multiplicative as well. You also just kind of want to go to these places anyway, so you're going to be clearing them fairly frequently. On top of that, you have things like the partial restoration +1 and +2. These do stack, and then defeating enemies +1. This is also going to give you more ults, which means more staggers, which means more iframes, more reposts, more damage, etc, etc. Next up, the other important ones are going to be your character specific skills. I would generally avoid the stat changing ones except for Revenant, because Revenant is just a net positive. You lose out on like 6 faith or like 9 faith for 25 strength, which opens up your possibilities for like other faith strength weapons, which there are a lot of in this game. It's not just a meme, it actually becomes very, very strong. And finally, with the Guardian specific one and then others, we're talking about defense. Do you want to go for defense on these relics? Of course you do, but you're not always going to get the damage dealing effects with these defense effects. For example, the Guardian specific one will give you plus 12.5% damage increase, and the +2 for physical damage resistance will give you plus 12. Now, I've run 3 stacks of these in my relics before, and as Guardian, I've still gotten one shot. So the problem is that plus 12, plus 3, like plus 24, plus 36 is just not enough by itself to guarantee you surviving one hit. What you need is to stack the bubble at full HP, the bubble because of successive attacks, and the bubble from successful guarding. All of those things plus these effects will help you survive one hit. But like I said, these things don't always roll with a damage dealing relic effect, so you want to prioritize damage over this defense, because the effects that you could get during an expedition are also enough to help you survive one shot. Now we can talk about the demerits. These are the debuffs for these new relics, and the stronger the effect is, the stronger, quote unquote, the defect is. That being said, there are some that just don't really apply, and those are the ones that we want to get. For example, taking damage causes poison buildup. You're gonna get one shot before you get poisoned. These effects also have an upside. So for example, taking damage causes poison once helped me against pests, because I procced poison on myself before Noster was able to proc poison on me. That means that I got protected from the parasite that she just couldn't proc herself. A similar case can also be applied to Caligo. I fought Everdark Caligo and I had taken damage causes frostbite. My own frostbite dealt some damage to me, but because of my frostbite barb, I basically got protected from multiple frostbite procs during the fight because I had that relic on. Then there are the reduced effects. This can be reduced stats. They can also not apply to your character. Say if you get reduced intelligence and dex, you are not going to care if you run that on Raider, so that's a pretty good choice. Then you do have some others that are pretty negative. You have reduced rune acquisition, a reduced flask HP restoration. The difference between being 99% HP and 100% HP is the difference between getting one shot and getting two shot. The reason why is because bubbles at max HP are pretty prevalent in the game, and those are your main lifeline for staying alive if you make a mistake. So you want to avoid these like the plague, because a reduced flask restoration can mean the difference between being at 99 and being at 100. And finally, you have the below max HP ones. Again, you never want to be below max HP, but these ones are also tolerable, especially if you don't have like continuous HP loss things. Status buildup, again, for the same reason as the other one, are not going to be the main cause of your downfall, but things like lower attack when below max HP and stuff like that can be a little bit detrimental. You want to be avoiding these things when you're playing a character that takes chip damage, so like Raider and Guardian, because otherwise you're just kind of killing your damage output. Alright, so that's most of the demerits. We can talk about Dormant Power helps discover X. These essentially change your preferred weapon class, which is what you get most of your weapons from. So this can change, this can be anything, and it can change your character from liking halberds to liking great spears to liking colossal weapons or whatever. However, there is a big downside to this relic effect, because the way rewards work in an expedition hasn't been updated or changed to accommodate for this. So to illustrate this point, let's take Guardian for an example. Guardian would like to use great spears and halberds. Now there are a lot of halberds in this game that you've probably never seen before, and that's because these are gray weapons. They can only spawn from ground loot, and the blue ones are the ones you get from clearing a cap. There is no instance in which a gray weapon gets automatically upgraded to blue, then given to you as a reward, because that's just not how the game works. So only these 5 are the ones that you're gonna get as a reward. Thankfully, all of these 5 are infusible weapons. Other classes, however, are not that lucky. So if we go up to the great spears, you'll notice that there's only 2 blue great spears. The added problem is that these 2 great spears are actually unique weapons in Elden Ring. That means that they cannot be infused. That means that you cannot get a tree spear with fire, you can't get a serpent hunter with lightning. That just never happens, because that's hard-coded into the regulation file. So what do you do about this? Absolutely nothing. This means that if you take Dormant Power helps find great spears on Guardian, you're actually killing your own loot pool, because the game's trying to look for an appropriate great spear and not finding anything. And so when that happens, it's just going to give you random crap. So try to avoid that. Look at all of the weapon classes that you might be interested in, and look at all of the blue options and determine, okay, is this one infusible? Can I get this one consistently? And so on and so forth. An added bonus as well that you should be looking at is which purple and legendary weapons does this weapon class offer me, and are they useful for the Night Lord? And so to close out, I wanted to talk about a very neat tool that is available for Nightreign that will tell you everything you need to know about your expedition as soon as you click go. And that's because almost everything about an expedition is predetermined as soon as you click go. That includes special events, invasions, treasure chests, church locations, shifting earths, and field boss locations, and identity. About the only thing that isn't predetermined that is important to us is the Night Invader event and the golden scarabs that you can find across. So to use this to our advantage, we're going to be using a very neat little tool set up by the 5th Mat over on the modding Discord server. I have talked about this tool before. The devs really didn't make an effort to actually randomize the seeds or randomize the points of interest or randomize the bosses or randomize any of that crap, because that's what a roguelike would do. So, this is extremely useful for just knowing where to go instantly before you drop it. So to show it off, we're going to be doing a little expedition, and I'm going to go slowly through it and then show you how I would route that instantly. And this can happen, like I said, fairly quickly. So we got Fissure in the Fog. We're going to be selecting my bird. And we can go over here and pick Caligo, and then we're going to sort by spawn point. Now, knowing that, we're then going to start the expedition. And you can do this in multiplayer as well. Obviously, don't be super annoying about it with your teammates or whatever. As long as everyone's on the same page, you can use this tool. And you'll find that there's a church here, this church here, and here. And then we want to find some kind of point of interest besides our spawn point that's fairly recognizable. So this one right here is a Crystallian Fort. So we're looking for the spawn point, which is down here. This is the far west or far southwest. And we have... Who's killing me? Oh, All right, with that little annoyance out of the way, we have a fort here. So this is map pattern 243. And now you know everything about this map, really. You know where the ring's gonna close, you know which boss it is, you know where the churches are, you know which area has which boss. And it's all fairly simple and straightforward. What this allows you to do, if you're playing in real time, is it allows you to route fairly efficiently. Right? If you've ever wondered, like, okay, sometimes I get a really bad average Ill boss to start with. Well, now we know it's a Grave Warden Duelist. So we could do the Crystallians, because we're Bird, we have a great shield to like break it very quickly. And then we can do this. This is a +5 increase to our damage output. Then we have an Ancient Hero of Zamor here, which is a day 1 boss. Fairly easy to kill. A little bit not so if it's red, but we can still make do. We also have a church. Then we can maybe do the Stone Skin Lords, especially if we're playing in multiplayer. And then we can do another Crystallian, or vice versa. Depending on how many Stone Sword keys you have, always remember that the forts and the churches are the ones that give you Stone Sword keys. So always try to route around those. You could have also instead gone north through the Fire Monk and then gone for this. But you gotta remember where the ring closes. We're making our way to the ring. So from here, we can then do the Leonine Misbegotten. We can also do the Depraved Perfumer or the Elder Lion. And then maybe do this church to close out the day. At this point, it should be Grafted Monarch time. And that's what we end up doing for night 1. Afterward, you can start working on the other average Ales or the night events that we didn't even mention here. If you look here, we have a night event here and a night event here. So that on top of the plus 10% that we already have, by the way, it's a little bit more because it's multiplicative, we would have had plus 7 from here and then plus 7 from here. This is plus 5, like we mentioned before. This is plus 5. And then from here, we can get this church. This is another plus 5. We can fight the Bell-Bearing Hunter. You can maybe kill the Dragonkin if you really wanted to. You can then fight Loretta. But at this point, the ring should be closing. So you can fight maybe Draconic Tree Sentinel right before the final dance. And all of these minor improvements are what make you far more efficient and will help you clear more of the map and get stronger and get more damage to then kill faster, to then survive longer, to then win. So there you go. This is a very important tool. Obviously, don't overuse it as any other tool. But at this point, since they got pretty lazy with the map patterns, we can get lazy too. So that's everything I wanted to show you today. We can look at Night Lords specifically later, or enemies that are worth killing if they have the red aura or not, that kind of stuff. But in general, this should help you significantly and yeah, keep you alive, keep your teammates alive, and get you guys up to depth 5. So if you have any questions or any other tips for people, put them in the comments below. And as always, have a good one.